interpreter for today, Diana, who will be giving us instructions on how to access interpretation. A este momento le voy a pasar el micrófono a Diana, que va a ser nuestra intérprete para hoy y va a dar instrucciones cómo acceder a la interpretación.
Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias. Buenas tardes a todos. Yo les voy a dar la información para poder accesar a la interpretación en español. Para aquellas personas que desean escuchar la interpretación simultáneamente de inglés al español, si están utilizando una tableta o un iPad, ahí como está en la pantalla, en el número 1, hay 3 puntitos y abajo dice More. Por favor, háganle clic ahí en donde dice More. Y al hacer eso, como pueden ver en su pantalla, en el número 2 se va a abrir el idioma interpretación que dice Language Interpretation. Luego, el tercer paso a seguir, van a ver la opción que dice English y Spanish, inglés y español. Por favor, elijan español. Y una vez que hagan eso, ya terminaron. También para aquellas personas que están utilizando una computadora para poder accesar a la interpretación simultáneamente, tal como está en su pantalla, en el número 1 van a ver un icono que es un globo. Abajo de ahí dice Interpretation, interpretación. Por favor, hágale clic ahí. Al hacer eso, va a haber un menú deslizante y ahí en el número, como está en la pantalla, el número 2, van a elegir inglés o español. Elijan, por favor, español. Y al hacer eso, van a escuchar la interpretación simultáneamente al español. Para aquellas personas que están accesando por medio de un teléfono inteligente o smartphone, estas son las siguientes instrucciones. Tal como está en su pantalla, número 1, van a ver 3 puntos y abajo dice More. Por favor, háganle clic ahí. Como está en su pantalla, en el número 2 va a decir Language Interpretation, interpretación del idioma. Háganle clic ahí. Y como está en su pantalla, en el número 3 van a ver English, Spanish. Elijan español, por favor. Y luego, como en la pantalla dice en el número 4, Done, que ya terminó. Y háganle clic y ya van a estar escuchando la interpretación en español. Would you like me to say the instructions in English?
Thank you, Diana. That's all right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Johnny just wanted to confirm. Perfect. So the interpretation globe, la opción de interpretación ya está abierta. A favor de accederlo si lo necesitan. Next slide, please, Johnny. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. We have a packed agenda, so we're going to move ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So for today's meeting, we'll be considering support for an urban forestry project in Barrio Logan from the Port of San Diego. The Port of San Diego will also be giving a presentation on its vessel speed reduction program. And following that, EHC will be giving an update on the Portside Air Quality Improvement and Relief Program. And SANDAG will be giving a presentation on the Harbor Drive 2.0 project. And we'll be closing out with a presentation from Caltrans on the statewide truck parking study with a focus on the San Diego region. And going through the agenda real quickly, after going through some updates and doing a roll call, we'll be asking for an approval of the meeting notes on today's agenda. Following that, we'll be voting on the letter of support about the urban forestry project. And following that, we'll have the presentation from the Port of San Diego on the vessel speed reduction program. Then a presentation from EHC on the Portside Air Quality Improvement and Relief Program. And following that, Sandag will present on the Harbor Drive 2.0 project. And following that, Caltrans will give a presentation on the statewide truck parking study. Next slide. And just going through quickly our meeting agreements, we ask that folks please create a space for everyone to contribute. We ask folks to step up if they are speaking a lot and stepping back to give space for other folks to contribute to the conversation. We ask folks that one speak at a time. So if you, when it's time to ask questions, feel free to use the raise your hand function or add your name to the chat. And we ask folks to listen to each other and respect each other's opinions, knowledge, and perspective. We'll do our best to be conscious of time so folks can be out of here by 7. And lastly, we'd ask folks to speak slowly and clearly for our interpreter who is joining us today. Now I'm gonna do a quick roll call. So steering committee members, please be ready to state if you're present when I call your name. Keith Corey from the city of San Diego.
Present.
Hi, Keith. Jack Monger.
Here, good evening.
Good evening, Jack. Sarah Giobbi.
Here.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Commissioner Naranjo.
Here.
Hi, Sandy. Larry Hoffreiter.
Here.
Hi, Larry.
Hi, everyone.
Elisa Arias from Sandag.
Here, good evening.
Good evening, Elisa. Joy Williams.
I'm here. Good evening.
Good evening, Joy. Martin Reeder from National City.
Good evening, Martin here.
Hi, Martin. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Roman Partida Lopez from the Green Lining Institute.
Hey, everyone. Here.
Hi, Roman. Dr. Stephanie Yoon.
I'm here. Good to see everybody.
Hi, Dr. Yoon. Jose Marquez Chavez from Caltrans.
Good night.
Hi, Jose. Helen Haas from U.S. Navy.
Here, here.
Hi, Helen. Dina Willier from SDG&E.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Filomena Marino. Not hearing Filomena. Janice Luna Reynoso. Not hearing Janice. John Alvarado. I saw John earlier.
Present.
Oh, hello, John. Hillary Medina. Not seeing Hillary. Alicia Sanchez.
Presente. Buenas tardes.
Hola, Alicia. Margarita Moreno. Not seeing Margarita. Naomi Sanchez. Not seeing Naomi. Vanessa Contreras. Hi, Vanessa. I see you in the list, but I don't hear you.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi. Salvador Razo Abrica. Not seeing Sal. Montserrat Hernandez.
Presente.
Hola, Montserrat. Sylvia Calzada.
Present.
Hi, Sylvia.
Good.
Ashley Valentin Gonzalez.
Present.
Hi, Ashley. Josephine Talamantes. Not seeing Josephine. And Maritza Garcia.
Here.
Hi, Maritza. Thank you, everybody. I'm moving on to updates. I wanted to give Helen Haas the opportunity to introduce a new representative for the Navy for the next couple of months.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, we have on board Samantha Louis. She's here helping us out while AC Dumau is out for doing another job for 3 months, helping other people out. So that's how we do it, helping everyone out. Go ahead, Sam, say hi.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Sam Liu, or Samantha Liu, my full name. Like Helen said, I am standing in for AC Dumal as the Regional Air Quality Compliance Program Manager for the Navy. So this is my first AB 617 Steering Committee meeting, and I'll be present here for this meeting and the next meeting. Good to be here.
Thank you, Sam. Welcome. Moving on to updates, I'm passing it on to Domingo to give some updates on the San Diego Air District.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Great to be here with you. Again, I just want to give some quick updates. First of all, our APCD website was recently updated and renewed. I am going to put the link on the chat so that everybody can see it. And I just wanted to just share my screen briefly to walk you through how to access the AB 617 site so that you can see all of our documents and also how to register for the meetings. So I'm gonna share my screen. So just bear with me for a second. And actually, I don't, oh, here it is. Here we go. Okay, can you see my screen? Is it up, Chuy?
Now it is, yes.
Okay, good. So I'm just gonna go to our homepage. So when you go to sdapcd.org, you will land on this homepage. As you can see, things look very different, hopefully more intuitive, easier to access. If you scroll down, you'll see these buttons. Down here, you'll see the Community Air Protection button. You just click there, and it'll take you straight to our AB 617 site, where you can see information about our meetings, about the program, our documents that you're familiar with, and then also for upcoming meeting dates, we list the upcoming meetings where you can click, and then it'll take you to the Zoom registration page. That's how you can register for the meetings for all those members of the public that need to do that. Again, here are the documents, maps of the community, all the documents from previous meetings, and our main document, the Portside Community Emissions Reduction Plan. You can also access this, all of this information in Spanish. If you go to select language at the top, you can select from a variety of languages. So you can go down to Spanish, right here, and then you can access all of this information in Spanish. Another update while I have my screen up that I wanted to share is regarding our public participation plan. We have been conducting a number of focus groups throughout the county to hear more directly from members of the public and community-based organizations about the needs for participation and how to engage communities better and more in all of the APCD related activities and decision-making processes. So we have a project website that I also wanted to share, and it is right here. So this project website, it's participate.sdapcd.org. I'm going to put this in the chat as well. I really encourage all of you to visit it, and you can learn more about the public participation plan development process. You can also access this website in Spanish. You can click on the top right corner for Español. That will take you to the website in Spanish. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the English site. In here, you can also click on Get Involved, Learn More, where you can provide your email address and you can subscribe to receive updates about this specific project. And then also you can fill out a questionnaire that will walk you through some of the questions that we're trying to get answers to from members of the public, just in general, how we can better connect with people all around the county. So we're very excited about this project and about this this new website. I'll stop sharing my screen now. Then another quick update that I wanted to share is our board, the Air Pollution Control Governing Board, recently adopted updates to Rule 1210, our toxics program, which now reduced the threshold, the cancer risk reduction threshold to 10 in a million, which is a great news. Is right in line with some of our goals in the SERP. So that's a really good news. I wanted to thank everyone who participated in providing input and feedback and support. This has been a great project, and we should feel proud about this accomplishment. And then finally, I wanted to just touch base quickly on our meeting for December. The meeting date for December is actually on the week of Christmas Eve. So I've heard a lot from a number of folks who will not be available during that week. A lot of people take that week off from work or to go out on vacation. So we are considering canceling that meeting, but providing updates via email so that we can continue to provide information as we make progress on some of the goals and strategies in the SERP. So more to come on that, but just tentatively, we are planning on potentially canceling that meeting and just doing email updates. And with that, I'll turn it back to Chuy.
Thank you, Domingo. The website looks great. Now I wanted to pass it on to Liliana from the California Air Resources Board to give a couple of updates.
Thanks, Chuy. And it's actually dinner time for my doggies, so you might hear them. So I just wanted to say hello, Liliana from the California Air Resources Board. So I hope you all remember that Joy Williams was awarded a well-deserved Hagen-Schmidt Award. It's the Hagen-Schmidt Clean Air Award from the California Air Resources Board. And actually, her award was the first ever in the category of community service and environmental justice. The Hagen-Schmidt Award is like the Nobel Prize of Air Pollution and Climate Science. And because of the pandemic, we couldn't hold the reception that usually features clean air leadership talks to highlight about the work of each recipient. And so those will now be streamed on Thursday, starting at 2 p.m. And I just wanted to share a little bit about what the description about Joy's work and her award says. It says, Ms. Williams has devoted her career to empowering residents of disadvantaged communities to protect themselves and their environment from toxic pollutants. For more than 30 years, she taught others how to harness the power of science, community, and advocacy to defend the right of all races, cultures, and income levels to fair and respectful treatment in the development and implementation of environmental laws and policies. So I just wanted to congratulate Joy once again and encourage you all to watch the streaming of the leadership, the Clean Air Leadership Talks on Thursday at 2 p.m. And also thanks to Elisa Arias for suggesting we highlight this today. So here is that. And then also, the Strategic Growth Council is having a few listening sessions for the development of the guidelines for the Regional Climate Collaboratives program. Those listening sessions are this week and the week of the November 30th. So also the draft program guidelines will be released in mid to late January. So I'm adding that link of the announcement to the chat too. Thank you, Chuy.
Thank you, Liliana. Moving along, just to get started, we wanted to ask for approval of last month's meeting notes and tonight's agenda. Can we get a motion and a second from steering committee members?
This is Maritza. I motion to approve both agendas.
Second from Elisa Arias Sunday.
Thank you. And are there any edits or anybody in opposition? Hearing none. So the meeting notes and tonight's agenda are approved. Moving along, I wanted to hand it over to the Port of San Diego to introduce this following item, which is a letter of support for an exciting project that will potentially be happening in the Portside community.
Great. Thanks, Chuy. Good evening, everyone. I don't know if you want to put the letter of support maybe on the screen, Chuy. Thank you. So just briefly, wanted to, the Port of San Diego is working with Urban Corps on a urban forestry program. And specifically, we're looking to plant 20 additional trees in the port at Cesar Chavez Park in the Portside community. So you can see here on the left-hand side and right-hand side, just a very simple letter of support. The first paragraph talks about Urban Corps is taking the lead on this initiative to plant 20 additional trees. The second paragraph largely just gives a little bit of background to the funder about the Port's AB 617 and the Community Air Protection Program. And then the final paragraph essentially just talks about the Portside community, the neighborhoods it encompasses. It's a 26-member steering committee, and that planting additional trees in the Portside community was identified in the Community Emission Reduction Plan that was adopted by CARB earlier this year. So high level, we're just asking for the steering committee to potentially sign a letter of support for this project. We're also very lucky to have Lauren Welch with us today. So I'll introduce her now. She's taking the lead in terms of this project, and she can answer any of the technical details. She's a development director at Urban Corps San Diego. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Lauren.
Thanks, Larry, and thanks for having me tonight. Just real quick, a brief understanding of Urban Corps. We serve 18 to 26-year-olds without a high school diploma. We have a charter school, so they receive their high school diploma in the program. And at the same time, they're working in our communities to preserve spaces and to take care of things like the planting of trees, the removal of invasive plants. We also have a construction team. We also do a lot of e-waste recycling and bottle and can recycling. So while they're working to get their diploma, they're also getting paid in our program to take care of the community, which is a great win-win. This grant, we're applying to a CAL FIRE grant. We've already gone through the concept proposal phase and are on to the final phase that's due here in a few weeks. And the application as a whole is an urban forestry workforce and education grant, which is new money with CAL FIRE. And the goal of this will be to plant trees, the 20 in Cesar Chavez Park, as well as 100 in the city of Lemon Grove. And in the same way, we're going to be doing community events. The goal would be with the park planting is to bring the community out, local community out, to teach them how to plant a tree and have them be a part of the planting of those trees. And then the bigger piece is the workforce component of serving Urban Corps Corps members to get them trained and get them prepared for jobs in urban forestry in our community. Yeah, I'm happy to, like I said, like Larry said, answer any questions, but just wanted to give you a kind of a whole look at the application and what we're looking to do.
I have a couple of questions.
Thank you, Lauren and Larry. And thank you, John. We'll go with Joy first, who had raised her hand via Zoom, and then we'll pass it on to you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chewy, and thank you, Lauren and Larry, for bringing this forward. This sounds like a wonderful program. I thank both Urban Corps and the Port for putting this together. We'll be happy to support it. I think, community members are hopeful that the trees can be planted in locations in the park where they wouldn't be in the open grassy area that people use for playing games, such as soccer. And I understand that there can't be a dedicated soccer field on Port Tidelands, but I think there's plenty of room in the park to put the trees in places where that kind of activity would still be allowed. And I hope it could go forward with that stipulation or that understanding included in the planning somewhere. So thank you.
Thank you, Joy. John?
Yeah, I know a little bit about trees. I used to be a foreman for Davy Tree Company back in 1967. Having said that, I'd like to know what kind of trees. I would hope evergreen types of trees. And then I would question whether or not they're going to be putting in eucalyptus trees, because eucalyptus trees tend to be self-pruning, which means they develop cracks and whole pieces up to several thousand pounds can fall off. Do we know what the trees are going to be?
Lauren, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm pulling up my my document now that tells me that the concept proposal was written so long ago, probably a good 5 months ago. The one stipulation CAL FIRE has is everything has to be native and non-invasive. And if you give me a minute, John, maybe we can keep moving, and I will tell you in the chat here in a second. I'm just trying to pull up. We worked with the Port of San Diego's arborist. Is that what his title is, Larry?
Yeah, yep, he's an arborist, yep.
To choose trees. And we had many discussions, and to Joy's point as well, about where they go, what they are based on being so close to the water, like what makes the most sense, how do we really make them trees that would stay long-term, that would be successful in that area. And so, John, give me a minute. I will put that in the chat if that's okay.
Thank you, John and Lauren. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
I guess I just have one more comment. Who will be responsible for the upkeep and care of these trees on an ongoing basis? And, will that be Urban Corps? They do a little bit of that kind of work here in Barrio Logan in the past.
That's a great point. Sorry, that's great. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, and I mean, I'm very much a tree kind of guy, and trees are, to me, are like living beings, and they represent a lot to me from my indigenous roots. And that being said, I have a great deal of respect for nature and the kinds of trees that might be going in there. So any information along those lines would be wonderful. And let me just say that the folks there at Urban Corps, many of the students, they are some of the most wonderful young people I have met as a school teacher. At one time, at San Diego Job Corps, which is very much like this program here. I've worked at least with 1,000 students who I was able to give jobs. And your urban core students are absolutely wonderful.
Well, I really appreciate that, John. And I appreciate appreciate it. So yeah, the maintenance, the maintenance, the M word, right, is like is for every project. That's the first thing to discuss is the maintenance. The grant pays for 3 years of maintenance, so there'll be kind of a plan establishment period that Urban Core will water, prune, mulch, restake. Will be in charge of that, and then the goal is that 3 years in, that the port will then take over maintenance of those, which hopefully will be a lot less intensive. But that's the short and the long-term plan for maintenance.
Thank you, Lauren and John. Lauren, do we have an answer on the type of tree, any chance?
Sorry, Chewy, I was focused on listening to John, so I stopped looking for it.
While we wait on that, I wanted to see if any steering committee member is comfortable making a motion to approve the letter as is, or if they have any edits that they would like to include.
I guess I'd like to hear from Lauren. Has the topic of location of the trees been settled? I mean, is it possible, or do we need to add a stipulation that it not be in the area used for team sports?
And sure, Larry could speak to it as well, but I think, when funded, the goal, because this is a community grant program, is I don't know how, if the port would reach out for insight from the community or how that would work, but I can absolutely make that note in my notes for when we get ready, and I'm sure Larry the same.
Yeah. My understanding is, I don't know if they've settled on the exact locations, but I do know that everyone's aware that that active sports are played in that green field, and at least the couple discussions I've attended, I haven't attended all of them. They have talked about ensuring that play space is open. So yeah, if you wanted to maybe have that modified in the letter here, Joy, I think we'd be open to that. Or if you just want to support it as is, whatever you and the rest of the steering committee is comfortable with is fine by us, I think.
One last question here. I believe in the chat came up and then it went away before I was able to read it. But I thought I saw some redwood trees, but what was the rest of it?
The chat says 10 Tory pines and 10 Dawn redwood trees from Lauren.
Well, with that it being the case, I'm 100% in. Good stuff.
Great.
I would make a motion to support the letter with stipulation that the active playing area not have the trees.
I would second that motion.
Okay.
This is Maritza.
Great. So we have a motion from Joy with the stipulation of preserving the green space area, and a second from Maritza. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through the roll call for vote, but just ask if anybody is voting in opposition. Please raise your hand. And if anybody is voting to abstain, please raise your hand. Hearing none, so the letter of support was approved. Congratulations, with the stipulation to preserve the green play space area. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And maybe what I'll do, just so it's clear, is we can maybe Lauren and I will work in a sentence to just clarify that and bring the draft letter, make sure that the draft letter is sent out to everyone, so you guys can see that before it's signed and passed along.
Thank you, Larry.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving along, I wanted to pass it over again to the Port of San Diego. to present on the updated vessel speed reduction program.
Thanks,
Hi,
Chewie.
Maggie.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maggie Weber, and I'm a senior planner with the Port of San Diego's Planning Department. And I'm joined by my colleague, Zach Birmingham, Senior Environmental Specialist. And we're here tonight to introduce to you the Port's recently adopted update to the Vessel Speed Reduction Program. Next slide, please. Last month, the Board of Port Commissioners voted to adopt the landmark Maritime Clean Air Strategy, a planning document that aims to reduce emissions associated with the port's maritime activities, improve air quality in and around the surrounding communities, and prioritizes health equity for all. Within the Maritime Clean Air Strategy, or MCAS for short, ocean-going vessels in Transit Goal 1 aims to reduce annual emissions from this source. The objective that corresponds with this goal proposes achieving this reduction by implementing an update to the existing vessel speed reduction program that aims to achieve upwards of 90% compliance. Co-benefits of this initiative include going above and beyond what the state requires, ecosystem enhancement, improved health, and educating vessel carriers about the benefits of slowing down while traveling in and out of the bay. These direct benefits include emission reductions that lead to cleaner air for the community, fuel savings for carriers, and a decrease in underwater noise that supports healthy marine life and their ecosystem. Last week at their November meeting, the Board of Port Commissioners voted to adopt the Enhanced Vessel Speed Reduction Program update in alignment with the MCAS. Next slide, please. The update to the Vessel Speed Reduction Program will also contribute to reducing diesel particulate matter emissions in the community, which is in alignment with SERP Goal 1. Next slide, please. So at this point, you're probably wondering what the Vessel Speed Reduction Program is exactly. The former original Port of San Diego program was established in 2009 as a voluntary program to encourage vessels to slow down from their typical service speeds in order to reduce emissions while approaching San Diego Bay. Cargo ships are asked to slow down to 12 knots, and cruise ships are asked to slow down to 15 knots. This speed range has proven to be optimal for emitting the least emissions while traveling. The former program targeted 80% participation within 20 nautical miles from Point Loma. Next slide, please. The program update that was adopted last week targets 90% vessel participation 40 nautical miles from Point Loma, increasing both the participation target and VSR zone. Additionally, port staff updated the methodology for determining average speeds consistent with other vessel speed reduction programs such as Ports of LA and Long Beach. Finally, port staff updated the program to include an underwater noise outreach component to raise awareness of the effects underwater noise has on marine life. Encouraging large vessels to travel at slower speeds not only reduces emissions in the air, but also reduces noise disturbances underwater. Next slide, please. Benefits. There are many benefits to the Enhanced Vessel Speed Reduction Program, as already addressed. The table on this slide identifies the potential emissions and fuel reductions available if the port meets our goal of 90% compliance. The percent in reduction is compared to if the port had no vessel speed reduction program at all. The emission reduction opportunity is equivalent to taking off the road 1,500 heavy-duty diesel trucks that each travel 100,000 miles annually. Again, that 4.3 ton annual reduction in diesel particulate matter will also help us reach SERP goal number 1, which aims to reduce diesel particulate matter from 2018 levels by 80% by 2031. Next slide. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this program with you this evening. Zach and I are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maggie. I see Joy has a question. Feel free to ask your question. And anybody else, feel free to raise your hand or add your name to the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie, for that update. Sounds very promising. I was just wondering if you know approximately what kind of compliance with that you're getting now in terms of like percent.
Yeah, we have had pretty good numbers with the pre-existing program. Zach, do you want to answer Joy's question?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Zach Birmingham. I'm a senior environmental specialist at the port, and I manage the program on the data side. As far as compliance, as of the end of September, so October 1st, within 20 nautical miles, which was the existing program until last week when we passed the upgrade, we were at 89% compliance. Between 40 and 20 nautical miles, which is kind of the extra zone that we put in, we were at about 61%. So we've got some work to do to get up to that 90% all the way through the 40 nautical miles, but that's kind of the point of what we're doing. We were pretty good at 20, and now we're stretching it to get everybody to 90% at 40.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from steering committee members or members of the public?
Right here.
Oh, hey, John. Sorry.
You should have guessed. My question has to do with this reduction of particulate matter and whatnot. Does this take into consideration much of the pollution that comes from up north, from as far away as Long Beach and LA Basin? It gets blown down here if you've ever sailed before or know the history of our currents over here. Much of that comes down, and then of course through the shipping lanes and whatnot. But then in addition to that, when our wind comes up like around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it blows all this particulate matter on through Coronado and right on through my backyard. So when you talk about minimizing or reducing, is it only local, if you will, emissions is what's being reduced, or is it overall?
Thanks for the question, John. I will try to take a stab at that. And then I've got Zach and Larry on standby, but the emission reductions that we showed in the presentation, that is exclusively for our vessel speed reduction zone, that 40 nautical miles from Point Loma. And some of that, the emission reductions are localized, some are off the coast. It really just depends, like you mentioned, where the wind is blowing. But I will mention that ports of LA and Long Beach also have pretty successful vessel speed reduction programs. So those vessels, I mean, they're really slow right now because they're all backed up, but they are also generally adhering to vessel speed reduction programs. And in addition to that, currently NOAA has a voluntary vessel speed reduction program as well, but that's more focused on protecting whales during the migration season, but it does have the co-benefit of reducing emissions as well. Larry and Zach, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I'll just jump in quickly, John. It is a good question, and the figures that we show in the presentation just speak to the vessels that call to the Port of San Diego. So in terms of the 4.3 tons of DPM reduction, we're just looking at reductions compared to vessels that would travel at their normal travel speed that call to the Port of San Diego. We're not accounting necessarily for any emission reductions associated with vessels that call up north.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody. If there are no other questions or comments, let's move on to our next item. We're a little behind schedule, but I think we're doing just fine. So moving along, I'm passing it to EHC. Dominic Navarro, not Leticia, will be presenting on the Portside Air Quality Improvement and Relief Program.
Great, thank you so much. So sorry, I'm not Leticia Ayala. Leticia Ayala is our Healthy Kids Director, and tonight is actually the graduation of our Leadership Development Program, SALTA, which you'll hear a little bit about. My name is Dominique Navarro, and I am the Fund Development and Sustainability Director for the Environmental Health Coalition. And I am excited to talk to you all about the PAIR program. Next slide. So a little bit just to start about who EHC is. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with EHC, especially because some of our wonderful employees and volunteers and community action team members are involved in this committee, and we are obviously very involved in the air quality work in the region. But for those that are not as familiar, we are a 40-year-old environmental justice organization. We were initially founded as the Coalition Against Cancer. And we are a binational organization. We work on both sides of the US border in ensuring that all communities have the right to live, work, and play in healthy and safe environments, regardless of their zip codes. Our fundamental strategies for affecting change in the region are community organizing, leadership development, and policy advocacy. Next slide. As I mentioned, we are binational, so these are our core communities. We work in City Heights in the city of San Diego, also Barrio Logan, the broader Logan area, West National City, and then we also work in Colonia Chilpancingo in Tijuana. One thing to note, and I will be referencing it later in the presentation, is that we do have a dedicated community action team in each of these neighborhoods. So this is a group of resident volunteers who meet monthly to identify the issues that they see in our communities, and they uplift some of the things that are happening. And we take those issues and we work hand in hand with them to advance policy solutions. And so we have a dedicated community organizer in each of these neighborhoods that facilitates these community action teams. Next slide. So we have previous experience working with air filters. So alongside the Barrio Logan College Institute, we did a pilot project with supplemental environmental project funds. And this was from the California Air Resources Board. And so in that project, we installed 25 filters in the Portside communities. These are a little different, as you can see, than the filters we'll be discussing as part of the PAIR program. But we wanted to just give some background that there has been a small pilot project of deploying air filters in these communities. And so these residents received a free IQ air filter that was funded with SEP funds. They learned about some of the indoor health hazards that could be affecting their respiratory health. And then for those that were willing, we also installed outdoor air monitors throughout the community so we could compare air quality in the Portside area. And it was a really exciting project. One of the reasons I'm so excited about the PAIR program is that the gentleman on the left, he actually shared that he suffers from really serious asthma. And because of his asthma, he hadn't had a dream in 3 years because he hasn't been able to go into a deep sleep. And so after getting the air filter, he shared that he finally had his first dream in 3 years. And it was a really beautiful story. And I think it's that's just going to be one of the few stories I'm sure that we're going to hear over the next couple years as we're deploying hundreds of air filters in this community. So we're really excited to be a part of this program. Next slide. So here are our partners on the program. We're working with the County of San Diego, obviously the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District. The vendors that are providing the monitors and the purifiers are IQ Air and the Veteran Building Maintenance and Supply. And then we also are working with the port, and we thank the port for their support. And just kind of like a really quick, what's going to happen with this program over the next 2 years is that our goal is to install 575 air monitors and air purifiers in Portside homes over the next approximately 2 years. So we'll be working, EHC is the contractor. We did a public bid process and we were selected as a contractor. And so we will be working to identify these homes and to coordinate delivery with the vendors of the equipment, and then to ensure proper installation of these air monitors and air purifiers in these homes. And there will be an opportunity I'll share at the end if you live in the Portside community or know people that do on how to get signed up. So next slide. As a reminder about how this program got started, it was a result of the fire at USS Bonhomme Richard. Our residents, unfortunately, many of them were stuck in their homes, struggling with the terrible air quality over that week. Unable to either take advantage of the hotel vouchers, didn't know that the hotel vouchers were available. And as we know, this fire was one incident, but there's continual air quality issues in our communities. And so as a result of this, opportunity, we received funding from the County of San Diego, $550,000, and we received an additional complimentary grant of $103,000 from the Port of San Diego to start this air purifier and air monitor project. And we're very grateful to both entities for their support. Next one. Let me also start by saying EHC did not select the equipment. The equipment has been selected by the County of San Diego, and those are separate contracts with those vendors. So I'll do my best to talk about the equipment, but I'm sure APCD staff or county staff can step up. So first thing is the indoor air monitors. So these air monitors, it's exciting because they can be just placed on a table side or on any sort of shelving. They don't have to have intense installation. It will monitor indoor PM 2.5, carbon dioxide, humidity, temperature, and weather. And it will also give a forecast of weather and air quality for the next coming days. So families can decide, do they want to go hiking? Do they want to play at the park? What's the air quality going to be for their children? It also will trigger a recommendation to turn on the air purifier if the air quality indoors is unhealthy. There's no phone or computer required, which is really important for the communities in which we're working in. And it will also show the outdoor air quality readings from the closest air monitor that APCD will be linking up to that. Next slide. So these are the air purifiers. As you can see, they're very different from the ones that we had before. One piece of feedback that we gave to APCD as it was developing this program was the ones before were too large. They were really unwieldy. They got to be difficult for community members to have. So this will cover a medium-sized room. It'll filter the air 5 times an hour. It has an auto feature, so it will automatically turn on and off when the PM levels are too high. The filter has about a 6-month filter life, assuming you're running it 24 hours a day. And then we will also be providing 3 extra air filters. And again, no intense installation required. This can be placed on top of a tabletop. We don't expect that we'll have to ask any landlords for permission. So it should be pretty easy for people to add these to their homes. Next slide. So just in terms of EHC's role, the way that we're going to be doing community outreach, we do have a list of the families that we did outreach to during the Bonhomme Richard fire. the people that we talked to about getting those hotel vouchers. We also did some phone banking and surveys to people to find out how they were impacted by the fire. So we have that existing list. We do public workshops all the time about our work and about our air quality work. We also have other existing lists of people that have either received a healthy homes assessment. Some of you might be familiar that we do lead remediation work. We've partnered with the city before, so we have existing lists of people who live in the communities. Some of our lists from our nonpartisan voter outreach. We also have our existing community action teams that I referenced, our canvassers. We have promotoras, who are community health workers, who are bilingual, they're in the neighborhood, they know the already existing networks. And then we have our dedicated community organizers. So as I said, we have a community organizer in each of these neighborhoods. We will also be establishing a telephone hotline where people can call in to find out information about the program and to sign up. And then we'll be reaching out to our community networks and our partners to share information about the program and have them share it with their clients and with their networks. And then most importantly, we know many of the people here either live in the Portside communities, work in the Portside communities, or have extensive networks in the Portside communities. And so we ask for your help in recruiting homes. We want to make sure that these get into homes as quick as possible. And so if you go to the next slide, this is the contact information for our Healthy Kids Director, Leticia Ayala. She will be managing the program. And so you can already start sending her some potential clients and lists that you might have. Reach out to her if you know some families or if you have questions about the program. And we're really excited to get started. And so I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Dominique, for that very informative presentation. Does anyone from the steering committee have any questions or comments for Dominique?
I do.
Hi, John, go ahead.
Okay, this is a topic very close to my heart. I actually sleep with a sleep apnea machine that has filters in it. And the filters are about as white as my screen is right now when you first get them. And they're grayish black after about 7 days. Okay. Now, as I understand that these machines, the air has to come into the room first, and then it cleans the air. Okay. But that means all this material, particulate matter and everything, is throughout the entire house. Okay. On your furniture, when your kids run their fingers across the desk and lick their fingers, now they just swallowed all of that mess. Okay. I'm really concerned because my doctor actually looked at my samples that I showed him and has written a letter specifically stating that it is absolutely imperative that I have clean air to breathe. Okay. Now, most of these machines, they take the air that comes into the building and then cleans it. Okay. Well, if you, like in my case, I'm like 3 blocks from the water. I mean, if I'm getting that, I know we're in a sloped area, so I might have the same amount that they have right on the water's edge practically. But having said that, I'm really concerned because what we really need is whole house ventilation systems that actually take the air from outside and clean it before it gets inside. Now, because I run a nonprofit organization, I am super concerned about our young people, and their parents, so you've got a couple of parents living in one room. Well, what happens to the kids? What happens if they got 5 or 6 kids? That means they need a machine in every room that those kids are going to be in. And that's not to even mention the fact that all of that filth is now inside of the home. Literally everywhere, in the carpet, so on and so forth. Now, we just had our carpet cleaned last year and we had it cleaned again, but this time we saved the water and you could not believe the grease that came out of that. Where's that grease coming from? From the window. And if you have a window air conditioner, It just does nothing more than bring extra air into your building, okay? And it's a real serious problem. I don't know how we're going to really effectively deal with that. I've got a couple engineers right now looking at the process to see what us individuals could do to make sure that we have whole house air purification. And without that, many of us are going to die.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Thank
So
you,
I'm
John.
really concerned on that level.
Yeah, you bring up some important points, and I see Nick has his hand up, who can also answer some specifics about the air purifier selected. But I will say your point is incredibly valid. It's important to us. That's why we are not necessarily a direct service organization in itself. Policy advocacy is just as important. We can put air purifiers in these homes as much as we want, but that's not going to solve what's outside and what's in our communities and what's in the parks where our kids play and what's in the neighborhoods where we do our walking. So 100% EHC is on board with doing the policy advocacy and the work necessary to make sure that we get to zero emissions in our Portside. But I will say, in regards to the, at least from what we heard from the county, and that I did fail to mention, is that hopefully this is just a start. We recognize that this will not purify the entire homes. We also recognize that a lot of these households do not have air conditioning. So in times of crisis where they need to shut their windows and it's hot, like we all remember during that summer, they can't do that. And so my understanding is that the county is also APCD is working to identify additional funding and long-term funding for more substantial investments in healthy air quality indoors. But I can pass it over to Nick.
Yeah, my biggest fear is that, first of all, I'm very thankful, at least they've identified a large part of the problem. But what I'm fearful of is that the community, once it finds out that, it takes care of, two adults in one room, but doesn't even help any of the kids, that they're going to say, guess what? We failed them again. And that's my biggest fear. Okay. I know the port and your organization have been very, very helpful. But my biggest problem is it going to turn out where they say, you're the problem, the port's the problem, they lied to us again? And that's my biggest fear right there. I don't want our community to have to go ahead and suffer through this one more time. That's my comment.
Hi, I'm going to jump in here. This is Nick Cormier from the San Diego Air Pollution Control District, and I was tasked with kind of setting up the program and selecting the equipment that we received, and the message is clearly heard, and I do appreciate the comment. We did consider options, the option of whole home air filtration as part of when we were setting up the program. While I think that is, a potential that we are going to investigate, as Dominique mentioned, if the program were to be expanded in the future, we were tasked, along with the funding approval, to get as much bang for the buck really as we could. And when we investigated the prices for whole home air filtration systems, we were looking at prices anywhere between 5 to 15 times more than what we were going to get for a comparable air filter or air purifier that would do a medium-sized room. And we understand that that the air purifier that we've selected would not cover the entire house. But at the same time, EHC will be kind of tasked with preparing the eligibility criteria for who will get selected for this program. But I don't think APCD is necessarily opposed to setting up additional or providing additional air purifiers to each household. So in the situation that you're describing, an air purifier for the parents and an air purifier in the kids' room, That's not something that we'd necessarily be opposed to at this point. But we are leaving it up to EHC to kind of come up with that criteria to figure out what works best for the program overall. So that's kind of an interim step given this limited amount of funding that we have. But we were tasked with trying to get as close to 1,000 house target with a very limited amount of funding. And this is really, I think, the best we could do given those limitations.
Well, I understand your limitations, and I really appreciate the fact that you guys have an almost impossible job to do. But that being said, that's one of the reasons why I also think, because in terms of my financial position, I'm probably not going to qualify. Okay, even though I have letters saying it's absolutely essential. So my whole thing is, okay, so we take a person like myself, and maybe through the state of California, I don't have to pay as much tax, or because we're in a strategic port, maybe the feds would allow us not to have to pay as much, federal income tax. My point is that there's some other things that I think we desperately need to get together as a community and start solving this thing, because I got to tell you, by the year 2030, many of us aren't going to be here, and not because of just age, but because of the pollution that's coming in. You should see these filters of mine. They are horrible. And we're talking 7 to 8 days. They're supposed to last like 15 to 20 days, and they only last maybe 7 or 8. But I want to thank you guys and allowing me to speak on this topic to this extent. I understand I've taken quite a bit of time, but there's just way too many lives that are at stake here. And I cannot bear the thought of us telling one thing to our families, to our communities, okay? I mean, I've been here for almost 72 years. I can't look these people straight in the face and say, that's it.
Thank you, John, for your
Thank
comment.
you.
Domingo, you have your hand raised.
Hi, thank you. Uchu just quickly wanted to comment. Thank you, John, so much for your comments, and you raise really good points. But I also just wanted to reassure you there's a lot more that we are doing and that we're working to accomplish through this program and through the SERP. It's not, the filters is just one component, and it's a step to clean air inside people's houses. But there's like our colleagues at EHC were mentioning, there's a lot of work that is taking place and that still needs to be done, right? So it's not something that we're marketing to the community as, this is going to solve the air quality problems in the community. It's just one of many steps. And it takes all of us around this virtual table to identify those solutions, and we're glad to have you here and others here who can also contribute and who have been contributing. So a lot more to come. But I also just wanted to highlight that Dr. Yoon has a question on the chat. I'm not sure if we're able to answer that through the chat, but just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
But let me just say, please take down my contact information and please check with me. I'm working with like 3,500 kids and their families every year. And I need to know what to tell them, and I need to know exactly what's going on. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, John. And in response, Domingo, it's Nick. As I said, I'm not the expert on the equipment. Nick's going to respond to Dr. Yoon in the chat. And then, John, once we set up, we're going to have a dedicated web page. We're going to have flyers. We're going to have, as I mentioned, the hotline. Once we set up the structure for this program, the contract was just awarded. We will be sending this out to everyone in this group because, as I said, we know you are all the community experts. So we'll make sure that everyone gets it so that you can pass it along to the community. Any other questions I can answer?
Nick, do you want to answer Dr. Yoon's question?
Yeah, I was just typing it out. Did you want me to respond to it verbally?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the question is if residents could get additional discounted filters beyond the 3 that were provided. And that's something we're still looking into. We're hoping to explore or either have APCD funding or another project partner funding to provide that after the 2-year period has elapsed. But that's something that we haven't fully identified with the funding that we have right now. In terms of the cost of the filters, I want to say the street cost of the filters, like the MSRP, or if you want to call it, I think it's around between $25 to $30 for a 6-month filter. So that would be the cost by just ordering it, online on a website.
One other thing I did fail to mention too, apologies, is that built into the program, and we thank APC for considering this, is that there will be a stipend to offset electricity costs, because we understand that there will be added electricity costs for running these air monitors and these air filters. So for homes that are eligible, they will be able to receive that stipend.
Thank you. If there are no other comments or questions, I wanted to move on to the next item. Perfect. Thank you, Dominique. And if you want, feel free to add your contact info or the right contact information in the chat. Moving along, I wanted to hand it over to Elisa from Sandag to introduce our next speakers on the Harbor Drive 2.0 project.
Thank you, Chewy, and good evening to all. A couple of months ago, Sandag presented to the steering committee and to the community on the draft 2021 regional plan. And this plan is based on the 5 big moves. Harbor Drive 2.0 is one of the projects that is outlined in the Portside Community Emissions Reduction Plan. And we know how important implementing this project is for the Portside communities. And this project is also in our draft regional plan. Alex Estrella and Suha Natarajan from Sandag are here to present today an overview of the concepts of operations that is being developed for this Harbor Drive 2.0 project. And this is with the focus on the next operating system, the technology that makes our plan work. Today, they are seeking input and feedback from this committee and from the community members to make sure that the needs of all users are being considered. Thank you for your attention, and I'll pass it on to Alex. Or is it Suha?
Alex should be here.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he's on mute, so. He's unmuted, but we're not able to hear him.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, now we can.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Alex.
Technology. And I'm the technology planning manager, Sandag. Apologies for that. But what I would like to do is, before I turn it over to Suha, and really the idea here to present to all of you today, and thank you for the opportunity to present to this group, is really to introduce and provide an overview of the concept of operations report, or what we call CONOPS. But also along the way, Suha is going to present some key insights to the CONOPS, but also gather some insight as we proceed forward with finalizing the CONOPS, as Elise alluded. Again, before I turn it over to you, I just want to provide some introductory comments. If you just could go to the next slide, please. So as Elise alluded, many of you are aware of the 2021 regional plan, and really the success of carrying forward the 2020 regional plan will rest on the implementation of the 5 big concepts, and specifically the next OS, the next operating system. And this process really includes the consideration of transportation technologies that serve as the basis for the next OS, 5 big news concepts. And these technologies reflect the needs of our transportation users. And I would say that in the past, when we would work with the local agencies, we would do a fairly good job in identifying what technologies or what the needs of our local agency partners would be. But part of this new plan and this new vision, we are really committed to making sure that we include input from the community and all transportation users to better understand and ensure that proposed technologies are in fact address the needs of our customers in order to improve everyone's access to basic needs and opportunities. So in order for that to happen, we gain input and achieve this starting with the development of this technical planning document, again, the Concept of Operations Report. So before we design or develop any technology, we in the region have to do a better job and a good job understanding the needs of all transportation users. So for example, if there's a strong need on safety at an intersection level, or providing bilingual access to transportation to inform the users of the travel options that they will have in the future, we need to document that, and we need to make sure we capture in this ConOps. So the idea here is that we want to come before you today. If you go to the next slide, please. So you're going to be hearing about the ConOps itself, and Suha is going to talk about some key elements of the ConOps, but also along the way, present some initial findings, but also gather your input. With that, I'll just turn it over to Suha, but we'll be available for any questions after the presentation.
Alex, what is ConOps?
Concept of Operations. It's short for Concept of Operations Report.
Concept of Operation?
Concept of Operations.
Concept of Operation. Thank you.
Suha?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Good evening, everybody. Next slide, please. So yeah, working on this project, we are working with a lot of local agencies that you see on the slide. They form the technical team. Port of San Diego, Caltrans, City of San Diego, and other partner agencies. We have worked with them to get initial insight. But here we are today to get input from the community. We can talk more about it as we go through the slides. Next slide, please. I'll start with a brief overview of what a concept of operation or ConOps is. A ConOps is a planning level document for the systems and technology side. It talks about the characteristics of the technology, who the various users are, and what their needs are, and what purpose the systems and technology is trying to serve or support. The goal for Harbor Drive Corridor here is to develop an integrated approach on the technology side that addresses the traveling and living conditions along the corridor and also looks at the equity and community needs. This ties very well into the Next OS concept that Alex just described, which is part of the 5 big moves. It is important for the ConOps efforts to capture the needs and then make sure that the technologies that we plan to deploy in the future are aligned with those needs, as opposed to just simply implementing the technology for the sake of implementing it. So this comes back to what we are hoping to achieve today, which is to get input from the community so we can get a better perspective of the needs that we can incorporate in the ConOps document. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Quickly about the project area, the limits for this project is bounded by the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal in the north, National City Marine Terminal in the south, and I-5 to the east, and it includes the communities of Barrio Logan and northwest portions of National City. With the U.S. Naval Base and shipyards also in the area, there are a lot of different uses and activities within the area. Next slide, please. We have received some initial feedback from other studies and stakeholders, and we want to build on that today. We'll quickly talk about some of the initial changes that have come up so far. The first one is the access and safety issue around the trolley stations, getting to and from these modes, safety at key intersections such as pedestrian crossings, and high levels of transportation and industrial emissions that are impacting the residential communities. We talked about it, the previous presenters talked about it at length too. Harbor Drive is a corridor of intense activity, bringing together high-density communities and major freight and industrial activities, which leads to high levels of transportation and industrial-related emissions, NOx, diesel, and small particulate matters. The highest concentrations of emissions have been found to be along I-5 corridor, and making the neighborhoods adjacent to the corridor the most vulnerable and at risk to suffer the cumulative impacts of the environmental contamination. Another challenge is the traffic bottlenecks that are generated by the naval-based traffic and shipyard traffic that also impact the neighboring communities. Next slide, please. Over the years, a number of activities have been undertaken to try and alleviate some of these challenges. Here we are trying to look at what is still in play and where technology might be used to provide a solution. Some of these are such as the truck prohibitions that were put in place for parking or traveling on local streets were only partially effective. There's high truck parking demand near National City Marine Terminal, which often conflicts with the Bay Shore Bikeway, causing impacts in the neighborhood and also emission concerns, and broader safety concerns for pedestrians and cyclists and at intersections, both along the Harbor Drive corridor and extending into the communities. Next slide, please. So from a broader level, understanding all these challenges led us to some of the key needs for this project area, and they fall into broad categories of improving safety, reducing conflicts between different modes, freight traffic and passenger vehicles, vehicles and pedestrians, and helping to reduce and monitor environmental impacts, and working towards improving access and support accessibility needs. Next slide, please. So this CONOPS also presents an opportunity to support some of the goals of the broader regional effort. One example is addressing the digital divide in the region. Portions of this project area lack broadband access, and this might be an opportunity to support other systems and technology projects in the area. Another avenue we recognize is to support the Marine Clean Air Strategy, or MCAS, by taking into consideration the goals identified in it while developing strategies that would help meet the port's transition plan. Next slide, please. We talked about the challenges, we talked about the needs. Now we want to highlight some of the example solutions. There's a wide range of these. We will be happy to hear from the steering committee about the needs and any solutions that you have seen and that are implemented in other communities. These are just a starting point, and we welcome your feedback. So one technology solution example is smart intersections. These are intersections where technologies have been implemented to support pedestrian safety, improve visibility, and also provide better bicycle access. Another example is of technology at smart intersections is providing audible signals at pedestrian crossings for people with visual acuity issues, and providing multilingual options, or even using universal symbology to overcome some of the traditional barriers. Another technology example, next slide, please. Another technology solution example would be the mobility hubs that you may have heard of before in other presentations from SANDAG. They're supported by technology that would improve access, improve multimodal choices, and also make sure we have equitable access to information, which makes the mobility hubs efficient and successful. Next slide, please. And the other area that would be of particular interest to this committee members would be active emissions monitoring, monitoring trends and impacts over time, particularly in sensitive areas. We are aware that the Air District did some emissions monitoring. We heard about it earlier today too, and we will be coordinating with APCD on the sites and data dissemination down the lane. Lastly, next slide, please. You may also be familiar with opportunities to provide feedback through community feedback applications, where communities can reach out to seek help with non-emergency issues. Next slide, please. So to wrap it all up, we have listed some of the needs that were derived from the various discussions we have had so far. We would like to build on this list today with inputs from the members of this committee. We also would appreciate feedback through a survey that we are conducting in parallel. We will provide the details at the end of this presentation. And I will just quickly highlight some of the examples of the user needs. One is reducing conflicts between various modes of transportation, freight, passenger, pedestrians, and cyclists, improving access and connections at transit stations, particularly for pedestrians, actively monitor air quality, reducing congestion on major arterials, preventing trucks from entering neighborhood streets to reduce pollution impacts on residents, improving equitable access to shared transportation, supporting multilingual wayfinding and traveler information across the study area. And while doing all of these, maintain the community characteristics and values too. So as next steps, we are gathering feedback from the community on the needs. In addition to the technical working group that I mentioned earlier, we have also met with two other committees at SANDAG. One is the social STAC. They gave very good comments on wayfinding and accessibility needs, the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council, and we also met with the Regional Plan Social Equity Working Group. They gave us great input on making sure that digital equity is ensured to provide for improved internet services in the communities within this corridor, and hope to keep this as a key technology focus for this area. Next slide, please. So as next steps, we would like to hear from you today. We will also share a link to a survey to get your feedback. We have had initial discussions with the port staff through stakeholder meetings. Now we are coming to public for comments. We will be going back to the port with updated lists based on all the feedback at the that we have received in a stakeholder meeting that's scheduled in early December. The schedule for this project is to complete the final CONOPS by January 2022. I want to add here that the CONOPS is a living document, and we can amend the CONOPS based on the findings from the needs assessment done in the blueprint work that SANDAG and the Port of San Diego are working on. Technology options may change over time, but the needs will be captured in this document. Please feel free to get in touch with us if you have any feedback, and we can go from there. Our contact information is on the next slide.
Thank you, Alex and Suha.
Real quick, we have the links to the surveys, and it's both in English and Spanish, so we could share that with the committee.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I wanted to highlight two quick questions that came up during the presentation. Sylvia asked, what are traffic bottlenecks? And Josephine asked, what are universal symbols? If you can quickly define those.
Great question. Sometimes we're so deep into our efforts on the technology side. But a traffic bottleneck is essentially when there's backup. And we identify the issue behind the backup, and it could be operations, meaning the lights aren't working, or maybe the design of the facility. But through technology, the idea is that we were trying to address those bottlenecks. And sometimes those bottlenecks can, I would say, go through or affect local circulation on local streets. And universal symbols, the idea here is that sometimes when we think about technology, unfortunately, the idea here is that make sure that maybe use symbology instead of stop or use language. So sometimes universal symbols are more, I would say, broader, reach a broader and community or broader group, so they actually understand what the signs at a stop sign mean.
Thank you for that. opening it up for questions. Joy Williams, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chewy. So I'm just a little unclear on what kinds of feedback you're looking for. It seems like a really comprehensive list of user needs, and there are many on this list that reflect high priority things that the subcommittees identified in developing the SERP, like grade separations at 28th and 32nd Street, reducing or maybe changing access to the I-5 freeway going through the community, those kinds of things. We've been hearing from the National City community for years about the safety issues in getting from the residential community to Pepper Park on the National City Tidelands, just to name a few. So I wasn't sure if you were looking for more concepts or you're looking for more specificity or people's ideas on what the priorities are, or
Now, what you express is essentially what we're looking for, but we want to make sure that we, capture or do our rounds with all the community groups in case something just doesn't get captured in other meetings. So you referenced 2 examples. In that case, the idea here is making sure that when we think about safety, it's maybe not safety at the intersection, but also, like you referenced, at-grade crossings. So the idea here is once we identified, hey, we have to start thinking about safety, not at the intersection level, but also at grade crossings, so that we think that and gather that, and then we start thinking about the technology that would enhance safety at grade crossings under different situations.
Okay, I think that does make it clearer. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy and Alex. I wanted to highlight Josephine added a comment that she'd like a bridge on Cesar Chavez Parkway to cross over Harbor Drive, inclusive of the railroad tracks by Cesar Chavez Parkway. So
It should be Cesar Chavez Park. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, a bridge that's similar to the one that goes from the parking lot at the Hyatt, I believe, to Petco Park. It crosses over Harbor Drive, and I would recommend that there is a bridge that goes, from perhaps Cesar Chavez Adult and Continuing Education Center all the way over Harbor Drive, and then also crosses those railroad tracks so that families can get over to Cesar Chavez Park in a safe manner rather than dodging trains and cars and everything else.
No, great input. Great input. Thank you.
I would like to go ahead and second that with Telemantes. There has been so many near misses where traffic is running down Harbor Drive. Young people are trying to just get over to the park area so they can play ball. I mean, it's very dangerous. So I would really second that with Telemantes. And the other thing that I would like to bring up is some of the issues as the connector streets. Like I'm right here on Logan Avenue, and one day I got a ticket for I have a commercial truck, and I'm loading food for residents here in our area, and then I get a ticket. And I explained to the officer that I am loading and unloading, then that's supposed to be legal. And she mentioned to me, well, that's true, but not for your truck. And I go, it's a commercial truck. It's a 3/4 ton truck. I pay to be able to load and unload, and I'm a nonprofit organization and I'm trying to feed people. Anyway, I argued and won that particular case. But I think we need to understand, like in the case of Logan, Sandag, when they put in the freeway, if you will, there is no alley or anything else on the, if you will, on the freeway side of Barrio Logan, or Logan Avenue. And so we have diesel trucks that come through here to drop off food to, the different restaurants, to drop off food to the, to the produce places and whatnot. And, I know it's a problem, but there needs to, we need to develop some kind of parking solutions. You know, maybe with some of the shipyards, they've got these huge lots that could withstand a second story, and you know, put all their parking over there. Because right now, so many military and contractors and whatnot use our neighborhood as the, you know, their parking place throughout the entire day. So something definitely needs to be done about that.
Oh, and this is the great input that we're getting. And absolutely, one of the concept strategies is curb management. So recognizing that there's an issue, and thank you for sharing that, we'll definitely consider as a need curb management for your own needs, like you mentioned, but also making sure that we appropriately manage that curb through technology. Absolutely.
Curb?
Like I
It's
mentioned,
called curb.
right?
It's called curb management.
Curb?
Curb.
Like curb, like the curb, or curve, like a curve?
No, curb. C-U-R-B. Curb.
Thank you.
And like I said, right here, you know, just 2 blocks down on Main Street, there are some wonderful areas where parking could really make a big difference. And then I don't know, you know, who could talk to, you know, the school down here, but they've got a huge parking facility down there that goes almost unused most of the day, most of the evening. And it's a real problem. And so let's jump in and fix it. There's solutions there. That's what's amazing. And they're not getting done. Really straightforward solutions.
Thank you, John, for your comment.
Thank you.
I added the sand egg survey on the chat for folks. I'll pass it on from Montserrat for the last comment so we can move along to the next presentation. Montserrat? Montserrat? I think you're muted.
Sí, perdón. Sí, yo también quería comentar que en National City tenemos una situación entre la comunidad del West Side y Pepper Park. Pepper Park está en los terrenos del puerto, pero regularmente no hay una buena conexión para que la gente pueda ir a ese parque. Entonces, tal vez ese sería otro punto que mencionar, porque es muy inseguro el camino para la gente de National City poder ir al parque, a Pepper Park. Por eso también quería mencionarlo, porque escuché por ahí, ¿no?, que estuvieron hablando del parque César Chávez, pero también en National City existe ese problema.
Gracias, Montserrat. And just for a quick translation, Montserrat shared that in National City, Pepper Park also faces some connectivity issues. So she would also like for Sandra to take that into consideration.
Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, no problem. Moving along to our last presentation. Next slide, please. I wanted to pass it on to Ty from Sutra Research, who on behalf of Caltrans will be presenting on the statewide park trucking study.
And Chewy, this is Jose from Caltrans. I just want to introduce Ty. And thank you and good evening. We're really happy to present an update on Caltrans' efforts to address truck parking shortage statewide. And as you know, our community emission reduction plan that was recently approved calls to increase the number of truck parking facilities and electric charging facilities and alleviate truck parking burdens within the Portside community. And we believe that this effort supports this policy. Ty Manson and Dan Anderson from our consultant team will be leading the presentation, and we would like to hear your ideas and input to make this effort as a success. Thank you. Ty. You're muted, Ty.
Thank you. Buenas noches a todos.
Gracias por su ayuda con nuestro estudio. And I will be presenting this in English so that I don't torture you with my Spanish. So first of all, I wanted to just introduce this study as a statewide study and just be very clear that this was a higher level study, taking a look at things that relate to creating some strategies and solutions for truck parking all over the state of California. And so there wasn't necessarily a detailed look at District 11, but there was an aspect of the study that focused a bit on District 11. And so that's part of the reason why we're very interested in your input on this. So next slide, please.
And for
Next slide.
sorry, Ty, and just for the community, District 11 encompasses San Diego and Imperial County within Caltrans.
Thanks, Jose. So next slide, please. So first of all, when there's a comprehensive study like this that takes a look at the entire state, there's a number of different factors that were reviewed in order to make sure that we had the best possible understanding of what truck parking needs were based on safety, which that's the collision factor, based on stakeholder needs, and those stakeholders include communities, like our community here in San Diego or in Imperial, as well as stakeholders that are from the trucking industry. And demand, in other words, how many trucks do we really have that are looking for parking? So those are the kinds of things that we looked at. Next slide, please. So there was a comprehensive score that was developed based on all of these factors. And they were weighted, as you see in the 3 colored boxes there. And then that score gave us an opportunity to look at each segments of the state operated right-of-way highways and understand, what are the needs in those particular segments. Next slide, please. So District 11 in San Diego, obviously has, San Diego and El Centro, obviously has a lot of potential for parking. And one of the things that you may notice from this little table over on the left is that there's a right-hand column that says shortage or surplus of parking spaces. And you may notice that there is at the bottom right corner, what appears to be a surplus. And so let me just be very clear that, this study, although it identified a surplus, the surplus isn't always in the places where we need it most. So there may be a surplus in the grand scheme of things, but certainly the surplus may not be in the places where we need it most, such as around National City Marine Terminal, Barrio Logan, the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal, places that conflict with Bayshore Bikeway, places that, need better curb management. So, those are things that are being considered in this study. Next slide, please. So one of the other things that was very important in looking at all of the aspects of community impacts of trucks and truck parking, were all of the things that have been previously identified as indicators through CalEnviroscreen. The CalEnviroscreen study and indicators gave us an opportunity to consider those factors as part of ways to develop solutions and strategies that will address all of those factors. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we also did was took a look at the SB 535 communities and did a little bit of an overlay of, where those communities exist so that we can understand where the high demand segments that are in need of truck parking also are impacting the SB 535 communities that are the ones that, may be most disadvantaged in their ability to contend with, the truck parking needs. Next slide, please. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go through the range of strategies that were developed as part of this study, keeping in mind that these are ideas, these are strategies, and these are opportunities for us to take a look at whether or not these strategies may or may not fit in the particular communities that you all represent. So next slide, please. So the very first thing that I'd like to start with is the incorporation of zero emission fuels infrastructure. What that means is that electric trucks need to have a place to charge. And so all of the strategies that we talk about subsequent to this slide will be in one way or another influenced, and this zero emission infrastructure, the electric truck infrastructure that provides charging, will be a consideration in each of those strategies in one way or another, because the transition to very low emission or zero emission fleets, trucking fleets, is going to be essential in addressing a lot of the air quality issues that we have heard discussed very explicitly this evening. So truck stops, and other privately owned truck parking facilities will be very great. There will be good opportunities to continue to work with the private sector in making sure that anything that's developed has the appropriate charging infrastructure. Publicly owned parcels, so things that Caltrans is responsible for, or other local government agencies are responsible for, will need to consider also how to incorporate the charging infrastructure for electric vehicles, because it's only through this infrastructure that the industry will adopt and transition quickly to electric vehicles. So please note though that Caltrans is not allowed to charge fees at facilities inside the interstate right-of-way, such as rest areas, for electric infrastructure. And so this is why it's important at various points throughout development of these facilities that we start thinking about partnering with and incorporating private sector facilities, to provide the infrastructure that's needed. Next slide, please. So let's next slide, please. Next one. So a couple of things that are very important is I-15 and I-8 have been part of a federal program called the Federal Highway Administration's Alternative Fuel Corridor Designation Program. And that's very important, because what that does is it gives us some funding, to make sure that those the electric charging vehicle charging stations are planned and along the various corridors that lead to the communities, and provide opportunities for those trucks to or those fleets to transition to electric vehicles. Next slide, please. So first strategy is to expand the state roadside, the safety roadside rest areas as RRAs that are currently at or over capacity. So the application for this particular strategy probably is most likely in Imperial Valley, or perhaps there's a rest area in North County. And there's also an opportunity to maybe take a look at conversion of closed facilities like one on I-8 and make sure that those facilities are considered anyway for dedicated truck parking to allow staging to occur, or trucks to wait for delivery or pickup in places like the port, at locations that are not necessarily immediately adjacent to those facilities. Next slide, please. So building public dedicated truck parking within the right of way. This is another opportunity for the state to take a look at, existing facilities and existing right of way that might have an opportunity to convert, maybe an existing rest area. There's one key though to expanding existing facilities. And that is that while it does help, that the expansion of existing facilities right now is only expected to perhaps address about 7% of the statewide parking deficit. So with that said, while this would help, certainly it's probably not necessarily the most effective one, for the District 11 area. Next slide, please. So this is one that was just mentioned by Alex and Suha, and this is called managing the curb space. And this one is near and dear to my heart, I guess, because I'm a technology person and, have always looked for ways that technology can actually help us to better manage the facilities that we have. And so the idea of this curb space management would give truckers an opportunity to look for parking ahead of time using an app, like, any app that we have on our iPhone, perhaps, or our, Android phone, or whatever phone or, tablet maybe that we use. But it would give them an opportunity to look ahead of time and not be circling around a neighborhood looking for parking. They would know where they need to go. They would know where they're allowed to park ahead of time. And that would be very beneficial for reducing emissions in a lot of the different neighborhoods that, are affected by, the facilities that need to have trucks coming in and out. So there are a lot of, challenges for each of these strategies. And one of them is that depending on, where the curbside parking is identified and how long the trucks need to park there, we need to consider also the facilities that are available for the drivers, because as it stands right now, all trucks have a driver, and drivers are human and they have needs too, like, restrooms and need for food and other facilities. So those are things to be considered. Next slide, please. So the last one on our list is industrial property owners provide truck parking on unused portions of property. So John just mentioned the school that has a large parking lot that goes unused a good part of the time. So those kinds of local knowledge around the different facilities that may have excess space would be really helpful, for the study team to identify. And we would love, for you to, comment more specifically on those exact locations. That would be exceedingly helpful. There are some things that may be, within, the state's reach in terms of, making those facilities part of a state strategy or a state solution. And then there are things that, that would have to be turned over to, a local agency to make best use of those spaces. But they're definitely, they are definitely needed. And then the way that truckers know about them and access them, that's definitely going to, fall back into the realm of making sure that information is out there for truckers. And that falls back into that same idea of that Alex Estrella was talking about with regard to NextOS. NextOS is an opportunity to collect data about all of these places and make sure that it's available to, those those phone apps, again, for truckers to know about this space ahead of time. And next slide, please. So, oh yes, and then the last one, shippers and receivers provide on-site parking. So the practical aspect of this is that this would probably mostly apply to a new facility. And the reason is because there are many facilities that are tightly packed into the working waterfront, and with not a lot of excess space. And so this once again becomes a strategy that's most appropriate perhaps for other parts of the county where new facilities would be built, and it would give, it would be an opportunity for the state to work with those new facilities to make sure that there was sufficient on-site parking so that trucks could stage and wait for their pickups or their deliveries. And next slide, please. So bottom line is better utilizing the current capacity. Remember at the very beginning, we talked about how that there are lots of parking spaces available, but maybe not in exactly the right space or exactly the right location adjacent to the facilities that need them most. But if truckers are made aware of where spaces exist in a more efficient way, and that those availability, the status of that availability is broadcast to trucks through, some type of a system or an application, that gives them an opportunity to choose appropriately and makes better use of the existing surplus that we have. And next slide, please. So the discussion here is, and the request that we have for this community and this committee is, if there are any particular strengths or weaknesses of any of the strategies that you've just heard, specifically for the disadvantaged communities in the San Diego or Imperial County regions, we would love to know what your thoughts are around that. And then secondly, and this is also so important, under what conditions would these strategies be appropriate for the community? Are there some here that you just believe this simply won't work, not for this particular community, or this particular one is the best one for this community, and tell us why? So we are really looking forward to whatever information, insights that you guys can provide for us, and we would just deeply appreciate it. And next slide, please. So there in this presentation, there is a synopsis of all of the strategies, and just to give you an idea of what the summary is of the things that we talked about during this presentation. And it's in English on this slide, and next slide, please, is provided in Spanish on this slide. And next slide, please. And we would ask that you, since we're a little short on time, we'll try to answer some questions, but we would ask that you, please perhaps address those questions that we had for you, if you would kindly, and you can direct them to any one of us here at this at these email addresses. And I thank you. Gracias por su valiosa contribución.
Thank you so much, Ty. I want to be respectful of folks' time, so just wanted to highlight Roman's question. If that can be answered, we can take one comment. I see Josephine's hand up. So for Roman, he asked if a school parking site was to be used, would the school be compensated for allowing the parking and or charging?
I can address that. That would be up to the state. So I think we'd have to build that into the strategy in that case. I think the bigger question for me is, would parking at a school even be appropriate? Though like Ty mentioned, those are some great opportunities. They could be unused areas that trucks could use, but if it's a school, it's probably in a residential area, and maybe that's not the best use of that, that parking area. So I think the broader question is looking for those areas that are appropriate. And quite often we see actually some private property owners that maybe have some unused space. And there are apps, going back to the technology issue, that would allow them to advertise that space and charge a fee. So it's sort of like the Airbnb of truck parking.
It is an opportunity, though, that we could take a look at for off hours parking, because certainly, Dan, you help me here, but I think that the midnight to 4 or 5 a.m. Hour is definitely there are significant needs during those hours, and so perhaps that perhaps those would be an opportunity, even with a school. So I think it's just a case by case basis, and one at a time, and then negotiating the appropriate partnership or business arrangement.
Thank you, Josephine. If you can quickly ask your question or comment.
Yeah, my comment, I would agree with Dan in the sense that a school parking might not be the best, because if trucks are idling, and especially in Barrio Logan and maybe in the port side of National City, we've got so little space anyway. So trucks parking in here would be, I think, would be a disaster, because they come in, they have to idle, in order to close down, and then they have to idle in order to gear back up, and what you're doing is adding the pollution to the neighborhood. But I like the idea of some of the truck stops on the freeways, since this study is a broader study than just Barrio Logan and National City or our Portside communities. It's a broader presentation, because it's dealing with the whole state. And even though you focused on San Diego and Imperial, I like the idea of the truck stops. That's not bad, because most of the truck stops you find are in an area that's not surrounded by community. They're off to the side. And I think that's an interesting concept. I never really thought about that. I would be opposed to parking in any of the businesses around Barrio Logan, because that's what I know best, because they're still so close to the residents that I think we're only enhancing the pollution in the area.
And hopefully the zero emission trucks in the future are going to certainly help with that. But yeah, agreed. Do you want to take the question in the chat, Julie?
What's the question in the chat?
So the question just consider parking space, that parking might bring criminal activity, and to consider that. So we have, that is something that we look at. I think it's not quite as much as the perception. Nevertheless, there are instances where there is quite a bit of criminal activity, but when there is an organized, dedicated space, and especially one of the things we're looking at is actually a secured yard. So if it were in an industrial park, having fencing around it, and having a gate, and trucks only are allowed in there to keep out the criminal activity. And frankly, the truckers prefer that as well, because then they have a safe place to park and rest and not be bothered or robbed at night. So in some areas where there is maybe a higher risk for criminal activity, then absolutely we'd be looking at security fencing.
Just to tag on to that also, Dan, and just to let the folks know that 1 out of every 10 truck drivers that's out there right now is a woman. The number of women driving trucks has increased significantly, especially in recent times. And I was a woman out there driving a truck for many, many years. So from my perspective, security, safety, and lack of criminal activity around a place where I need to rest would be essential. And I know it's especially essential for you know, the women that are out there driving trucks these days.
Thank you so much, Ty and Dan. I'll be sending along presentations and folks' contact information later this week, just so folks can send over comments and answer those discussion questions you had. But thank you so much for the informative presentation.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, everybody, for sticking around. We are a little bit over time, but we had great discussion across all the presentations. So thank you to all our presentations and, of course, all the steering committee members for your engagement. I wanted to hand it over to Domingo to close it out for us.
Thank you, Chuy. Thank you, everybody, again for your time tonight. And just a reminder, we will be following up via email to confirm whether or not we will be switching our meeting next month to an email update. More to come on that. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Buenas noches a todos. Gracias.